Hi, I'm Tad, and welcome to the Nerdery, the breeding and boarding ground for nerdlings. So today we're going to talk about reading aloud to your children again. Reading aloud to your children is a fantastic idea. It's a great way to help them learn and help develop a love of reading, which can lead to a lifelong love of learning. So, I'm going to give you 3 read aloud suggestions again, and once again the theme is talking animals. I promise I will do other themes in the future, but I really like this one. I like talking animals, even if they happen to be the bad guys. So here we go, 3 book recommendations. So my first read aloud recommendation for you today is Redwall by Brian Jakes. And yes, that is how you say his name. I looked it up. Oh yeah. So Redwall is a story about a young mouse by the name of Matthias who lives at Redwall Abbey, who was an orphan and who was raised at the Abbey and one day wants to enter their order. But for now, he also wants to be a warrior, like the legendary Martin the Warrior. So when Clooney the Scourge comes into Mossflower and threatens the Abbey, he has to find the sword of Martin and then defend Redwall from the attack. So this is a great story. It was written in 1986 and has spawned like 20 books after that. Brian Jakes is no longer writing because he died a couple years ago, but prior to that he kept on writing more and more of them, and they're a lot of fun. I remember reading them as a child, and I remember loving the adventure and loving the action and loving the story, but there is a little more here, because the Redwall mice are really all about living in peace with those around them. They don't go seeking the fight. The fight has to come to them, because they are peace-loving mice who desire to live in peace and harmony with others around them, which is something I think we should all strive to do. But what I remember most about these books as a child was the food. The descriptions of food. I just started reading this book to my children, and like the 3rd chapter of Redwall is about a really amazing feast that the mice have, and it makes me hungry. That's how good Brian Jakes is at describing food and feasts. Like, I literally wanted to stop reading the book and go get some food, because the descriptions were so vivid and so beautiful you could almost taste the food that was being served. So this book is a fun read. My children are currently enjoying it. I think it's probably a little above my 3-year-old's head, but I think my child who's almost 7 is tracking with it and really enjoying it. So I highly recommend it. It's a great one. If you want to start, it's a good one to start with. The second book recommendation I have for you today is On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson. And as you can tell from the title, this book is at least somewhat partially humorous. It's got a lot of humor in it, but there's more than humor to it. I wouldn't call it a funny book. I would call it a serious book with humorous moments and humorous things. So essentially the story follows 3 children who have to run away from the fangs of Dangs. Now you might wonder, what are the fangs of Dangs? Well, they're essentially lizard people who can talk and who are evil. They conquered the land of Scree not too long ago. And as the book puts it, it essentially says, well, their Screeans are perfectly free as long as they're in their homes by midnight, and as long as they don't carry any weapons, and as long as they don't complain when their fellow Screeans are taken away in a carriage and taken across the sea and never heard from again. So as you can see, they're not free at all. They're under heavy oppression from the Fangs of Dang. These children get in some trouble with the Fangs of Dang and have to run away. The Fangs of Dang are looking for something called the Jewels of Anaria. And as the kids are running away, they think the kids have them. As the kids are running away, the kids meet a lot of interesting characters and interesting creatures. The world is an interesting and humorous place, but it's also filled with darkness and scary things. So it can be a little scary, but it also is exciting and an uplifting tale in the end. I would highly recommend this book. I have not read it to my children. I've only read it myself, and I enjoyed it reading it as an adult. I think when my kids are a little older, maybe 8 and 9, or maybe 7 and 8, I would read it to them, and I think they'd enjoy it. So check it out. It's called On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson. The third book recommendation I have for you today is The Green Ember by S.D. Smith. My place beside you, my blood for yours, till the green ember rises, or the end of the world. This seems to be the rallying cry. of the bunnies in this world who have been on the run, essentially, from the wolves and the birds of prey. They wait expectantly for King Jupiter's heir to return, and to set things right, to conquer the wolves and the birds of prey, and mend the wood. The birds and prey and the wolves ran them out of the warren where they lived, and now they live in hiding in mountains and in other places scattered about, no longer having the force that they used to have, no longer having the peace that King Jupiter brought them. So in the midst of this story, what we really follow in this book is two rabbits named Heather and Picket, whose parents are captured by the birds of prey long after the initial battle because they were in hiding from them, and who, once captured, the kids run away and are ended up being rescued by their uncle and another strange rabbit who they've never met. Now, after this, they go through quite a few adventures and run into the other rabbits, hoping and expectantly waiting for the mended wood. But along the way, they have their own problems. They find that they're selfish and have other issues. They learn about loyalty, friendship, and family during this story. This story is absolutely fantastic. I was reading it to my children, and they were liking it, but they got a little scared at a few parts and asked me to stop. So I stopped reading it to them. But it was so good that I had to finish it myself, because I didn't want to just let it sit. I needed to know what happened next. So I did, and I read it. In a lot of ways, this book is reminiscent of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, or Redwall, but it's not in any way, shape, or form derivative of those works. It stands on its own, and I think in the future it will be considered a classic. It's a really good book, and I highly recommend that you pick it up to read to your children or to read yourself. I hope you enjoyed the video, but before you go, I want to end with a thought on fantasy and why I think fantasy and talking animal books, fairy tales, etc. are so important. So let me quote J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, when he says in his work on fantasy or on fairy tales, "It," referring to fantasy, "does not deny the existence of discatastrophe, of sorrow and failure. The possibility of these is necessary to the joy of deliverance. It denies, in the face of much evidence if you will, universal, final defeat, and in so far is Evangelium, good news, giving a fleeting glimpse of joy, joy beyond the walls of the world, poignant as grief." The best fantasy points to something beyond ourselves, something greater than ourselves. While we face sorrow, so do characters in fantasy settings. But ultimate defeat doesn't happen typically. So, if you liked this video, click the like button. Subscribe to me so you can know when new videos come out and so you can catch each one as it comes out. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter @TheNerdery. Till then, it's been The Nerdery.